Hi, I'm Brian. We're taking a look today at the 2026 Cupra Born VZ. Has Cupra listened to the customer feedback and improved this car? We'll take a closer look and find out. We're going to cover a couple of different elements. If you're unfamiliar with the Born and the Born family, the easiest way to explain it to you is think about the ID3 from Volkswagen. This is the VZ, which is short for Veloz or Veloz. If you're Spanish and my pronunciation is making you upset, I'm very sorry. That means speed. So what is that in the Volkswagen family? That would be the ID3 GTX. So how is this different? Well, if you're not familiar with the Volkswagen family, Seat and Cupra usually take the role of performing the younger, more sporty brands. So this is supposed to be a little bit more energetic in terms of its design. So, interestingly, the predecessor to this car was criticized a little bit by some of its customers for being a little bit too round. You know, it's not that it was an unpleasing design, it was just, it didn't really convey the sporty element that Cupra usually are known for. So this is the first way in which we can see if Cupra are actually listening to their customer base. They say in their marketing literature that this is a shark-nosed face. If I had €1 for every time a designer had explained that to me, I don't look at this and get shock, but I tell you what I do get, and that's an awful lot more angularity than the predecessor. To me, the front is sporty and energetic now. This car looks aggressive in its stance right from the front. The headlights have been redesigned. I'm going to show you those in a little bit closer detail. Now you can get full matrix as an optional extra, but what they will all come with are these integrated, what they call 3D triangular designs, which are designed obviously to pick up the accent of the Cupra branding and logo. I think they look pretty cool, actually. I'll tell you what I'm never 100% convinced about, and that's the Cupra styling itself. It does seem to split opinions somewhat. Long-time viewers might remember me at the launch saying that to me just reminds me of the Transformers. I don't know if you still feel that way. I'm still working on trying to learn to love it, but lots of people already do. So at least you're not going to have your car mistaken for anybody else's. The other thing I really like about this new angular design is that if you are familiar with this car and the way that it drives and handles, what you will know is that Cupras are much more sporty in terms of their setup on the road. So they're a little bit less comfortable, but they do drive more aggressively. What I like about this design right from the get-go is that you already expect the drive to do that. So hopefully the customers are going to be a bit more happy that the looks match the drive. What do you think? Also new in the design of this car, you can see we've got new air intakes on the side, and they nicely lead us round to these new wheels. So these are available in 19 or 20 inches. As you can see them here, they're 20. They're actually a little bit wider on the tires than the predecessor, which they say will make for more economic driving, but also give the car better handling. An interesting side note, if you haven't seen this before, you see this plastic detail here? The reason that this exists is that the law in various countries states that the body has to be at the very least the same diameter as the wheel. So as you make the wheel slightly bigger, you have to add this detail just in order to make the car compliant. Crazy, but kind of looks a little bit stylish too. 4 meters 32 or 170 inches in length. That's actually just a little bit shorter than the predecessor, which helps it have a bit more accenting of that really aggressive design. This color is a brand new one for the lineup called Timon Fire Grey. I've almost certainly murdered that name, but there should be about 6 additional colors to the add up of the lineup as well, although this is the only new one. It looks very dynamic in this setting. I'm not completely convinced about this styling detail back here, but it does at least add a little bit of original flair. I think it's worth pointing out a little bit lower down on the car, you can see the running board styling. And again, this isn't a particularly new feature, but it just helps the car to feel a little bit more intentional. Many of those features, of course, help and accentuate the aerodynamic flow, but they also visually really set the car apart. So far, I'm very excited to see what Cupra have done with the car in terms of listening to the customer. This definitely feels like a departure from what's gone before. It kind of looks quite exciting. It's an interesting detail if you're not familiar with it, that on every Cupra, this is the only place you will see the model name is actually in the side of the rear lights. This styling with the lighting design is really dynamic. So if you can actually get up close and take a look, there's something very visually interesting happening there. Also, you can see that the logo is accented on the back, which again, whether you're a fan of the design or not, really does help to make it feel a little bit more unique. 1 meter 81 or 71 inches is the width of the car, so that remains unchanged. But again, you can see that the styling is an awful lot more aggressive. Right from the top, the intention of the design is clearly to put the visual focus down in the lower third. If you look at the massiveness of this diffuser, it's intended to make you think, I think, a little bit retro of 80s hot hatches. This is clearly making a pretty bold statement, which we're going to find out a little bit later whether the engine can deliver. Motor, I'm always getting in trouble for that one. If the motor can live up to the promise of the exterior. It looks exciting, energetic, but is this all just the exterior, or is the inside similarly upscaled? Let's take a look and find out. There have been some changes on the interior, which we should notice right from the get-go when we enter the car. The first one, which Cupra are very keen to point out to us, is the redesign of this door. There was a lot of customer feedback that said the existing panels felt too plasticky, really not well enough finished. And it's interesting to note that right from the moment that you open this door, you can see that there's been a lot of attention to try and fix that situation. Now, let's not kid ourselves. You're still going to be finding a fair amount of hard plastic here, but the styling notes really suggest that a lot more effort's been put in. You have the Cupra copper accentuation running, of course, right the way throughout the design, but the mix of materials here is very nice. Anywhere that you actually touch this door, it feels a lot more considered and thought out. It's interesting and worth noting that they're also talking about sustainability with the redesign. So 75% of the main hard surface interior is recycled material and 73% of the seat. Are they any good? The seats are another place in which attention to detail is really about material use and finish. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's a slightly unusual finish that you have here. I guess the best way to describe it is, have you ever encountered those materials with little bobbles of plastic in them to prevent slipping? It does feel a little bit like that. So it's not the most natural feel, but what I do like about it is that that will provide a good amount of grip when you're sitting in it. This for me is something of an opinion splitter. I've never been massively in love with the Cupra's big plastic presence within their seats. But a seat is all about sitting, not looking. So how does it feel when you actually get in the car? In one word, held. It's a nicely designed seat. The lumbar support's really good. And you can really imagine throwing this around the corners and feeling like you're not going anywhere at all. So far, we won't know till we take it out for a drive. I'd have to say this is a really nice balance from Cupra. You both get the sporty feeling that you want, but at the same time, not too bucket-like, so you can still easily move in and around. This brings us on to the most exciting bits of the redesign, according to customer feedback. There are two things that Cupra got slated for in the earlier version. The first was the driver's cockpit display. Too small, not enough information. That's nearly twice the size that it used to be. We'll take a closer look in just a second. The other thing is the steering wheel. Now this again is quite a radical departure. Most common customer feedback, we want more physical buttons. Well, take a look at this. Again, it really feels that the customer's been listened to. This steering wheel feels like something you actively want to engage with, combined with the driver's display cockpit, and it kind of feels like a more finished version of this car. We've got over 10 inches of driver's cockpit now and 12.9 on the infotainment display. Now this might look very similar to you, but again, customer feedback said that there were more than a few glitches in terms of how the display worked. Now, because this is a pre-release car, it's not entirely fair to cycle through it in this way, because all of this is subject to change, and you tend to find on pre-release models they can be a little bit more laggy and missing some features. So although it's fun to mess around with, the performance that you can see here isn't actually representative of what you'll necessarily get on the standard car. But I think what is worth mentioning is that the updates mean that there should be far less problems with the software, and you will also get further updates that will allow you to understand what can be changed. I think it's a part of the frustration that people have with modern cars, that when you buy a car or you lease a car, often they don't tell you exactly how many updates for how many years and when they will stop and be reconfigured, like they do with phones. As hopefully we go forwards in the industry, there'll be a bit better communication with customers, telling them what they're in for. But in the meantime, if you have one of these under lease and you find that to be a problem, it doesn't seem as if it's going to be fixed within the model that you currently have. You're going to need to get a newer version to get the newer software, because although technically most of the hardware remains the same, it can't be updated to the recent version. The main reason for that is compliance and regulatory issues that affect cars that don't affect things like laptops and cell phones, but it's worth knowing about nonetheless. Anyway, that's a lot of noise about nothing. This is the stuff that we're excited with. Having spent hours driving around in a car that just didn't feel like a car anymore, it's really nice to see these things coming back. It's just so great to actually have controls that you can mess around with. And this Cupra button, well, okay, it's just a fancy way of saying a car driving mode selector, but it's really nicely integrated into the new steering wheel to make you feel as you have control. And fortunately, you don't any longer have to look down in order to see exactly what you're pressing and exactly how it works. What you're looking at over here is the new Sennheiser contrabass system. It's got 10 speakers and should provide a little bit better of a sound than the predecessor. The material selection is really nice throughout this car. They really do give you the impression that they've listened well to the customers. So right as you come throughout, everything that you touch feels well finished and nicely put together. There's nothing here that's radically different. It's just the way that it all sits together. It feels so much more designed and intentional. Well, the next thing that's happening in the life of Cupra is, of course, the launch of the Raval, and that, for argument's sake, is going to be the closest thing to a VW Polo that's now really available across the range in electric form. Why is that relevant? Well, this then falls into what was traditionally the Golf territory. And the reason that matters is, as anyone who's ever owned a Golf knows, being able to fit people and things in the back is somewhat essential. So yes, this might be the hot hatch of the family, but that doesn't change the interior dimensions. And you're not going to buy one of these if you can't fit at least 2 decent sized children in the back of it. Happily, that's still more than possible. A good amount of legroom. Now, this is a bit of an opinion divider, I think. This is, of course, the top line, the VZ. This is all very hard plastic. There are positives to that, which is that if you're transporting children in their football gear, at least you can wipe the seats clean. But it doesn't exactly feel premium. And you're never going to completely convince me that losing the rear pocket here is entirely a justifiable exercise, not least because, given my age, I still have to carry around a road atlas with me. Where am I going to put it? There's no rear pocket. But then on the upside, the children can't put sweet wrappers in it. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, right? Coming further down, well, it's as straightforward as you would expect, I suppose, but I always do like to see this. There is the inclusion of 2 USB-C charge points, so no massive trailing cables going from the front, and the rear seat passengers still feel like they're included too. Headspace is not bad. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, but I do have a very long torso, so you can actually compare me sitting down to around about 6 feet in height. As you can see, it's really not bad. I'm actually pretty comfortable back here. So overall, I would say same attention to detail and nice finishing that you get in the front. My only caveat is just not being in love with the back of these seats. But come on, you're not going to be sitting back here, are you? You're going to be sitting up there. And up there, everything is fine. Well, I still think that practicality in this car segment is key. And if you leave things in the back of your hatchback and don't want them stolen, this is a really good car choice. Why? Well, unless somebody has shown you, I challenge you to know whereabouts the release for the rear is. Did you guess that? I'd love to pretend that we figured that out for ourselves, but unfortunately we had to ask little bit embarrassed, have to admit it. What you're looking at back here is 385 litres of load space, which again is quite important if you're going to compete with people's perception of what they want from this type of car. Now, it's not the biggest boot in the world, but then I don't think that this car is geared exactly entirely to that customer. You can comfortably fit a suitcase in here, and of course the seats will fold flat to give you a lot more space. So, long story short, plenty enough room for sports kit, shopping, and most things you could transport around. But if you regularly want to stick a dog back here, you're gonna need to get a smaller dog. The seats have a 60-40 split for the back, but as you can see, it's always an issue with electric cars. You just can't really optimize the way in which these things sit. So although you can fit a lot more load space through, it clearly is still going to have a little bit of a lip. It's got one of those rather nifty adjustable floors in the back though, so if you want to get closer to flatter, you can. I'm going to show you that right now. Just come around here and fold this seat down too. And then you can see, I'm sure you're used to this from other models, but it's a 2-level proposition in the rear. So we can put this in its, come on now, higher position. There we are. And now you have a much more convenient load space. This is actually a pretty old idea, but it's still really handy, especially for when you want to stick things in the back. And for the rest of the time, you just get a little bit more depth. Again, not a new idea, but I'm always surprised that more cars don't still do this because it is still super handy. Not only the mid-space handrest, but also the ski follow through. Yeah, I know, not everybody owns skis, but it's surprising how often you do find that there are things you want to stick through. Christmas trees, children, dog access, bit of everything really. Baguettes, yeah, baguettes. Let's take a look at the charge point now. We're going to come onto the motors in just a second, but for now, the VZ has, of course, as you'd expect, the highest capacity battery of the lineup. They're claiming that it will do over 600 kilometers range. Of course, we understand that means on a test track with a guy who's weighing as much as an 8-year-old child, probably at 50 miles an hour with a backwind. So realistically, 600 kilometers plus. I'm hoping that you can average out more than 400 in standard use would actually be great and more than sufficient for everyone. Meanwhile, this is going to provide you with not only charging, but also V2L capacity. If you're not familiar with that, that's vehicle to load. And what it means is the battery can work 2 ways. So you can charge up things like laptops, electric bikes, whatever else you need. It's just a handy work through. You should, in fairness, be able to expect that on most electric cars these days. Let's take a look and see what's underneath the hood. Well, obviously no frunk on this one. A kind of a weird and funky bonnet hook though. Look at this. Just sort of sits there resting. Well, as we take a look around, this, of course, is the largest of the available setups. There are 4 different trim levels available in the design. This is the top one, the VZ, then the Endurance, then the Born Plus, and then, of course, entrance level Born. They have battery capacities of between 79 kilowatt hours at the top end for this car, down to 50 at the entrance level. Motors going from between 240 kilowatts for the VZ, that's what we have here, down to 125 for the standard entrance level model. All charging is at 11 kilowatts on AC, and then 185 for DC if you go with this car. So if you go with this car, the largest battery, and you want to charge it fully, it'll take you around about 8.5 hours if you're doing on AC charging, or 26 minutes to half an hour to get to about 80% if you're doing it on DC fast charging. If you're considering buying one of these, I would say from experience, you should be expecting a range of somewhere in the 400 to 450 kilometers, around about there, which I think for most people should be more than enough. Well, that about wraps it up for now. I think there's a huge amount to feel positive about in terms of what they've achieved with this car. It really does feel as if they've actually listened to their customers. This to me is sportier, more agile, more aggressive, more muscular visually. But thank goodness the cockpit has changed. So it does actually feel as if intentionally they want the driver to enjoy the experience of sitting behind it. Sorry, Cupra, I just didn't get that feeling from the predecessor. So everything to look forward to, and I'm more than a bit interested to see if this is what they're doing with this, what are they going to do with the Raval? We'll have to wait a little bit longer to find out.